Hello, I'm Marja from Sew Local Stitch Lounge, and today I'm going to show you how to make this wonderful windsock. Let's go over the supplies that we'll be using for this project. You're going to have an inside and outside fabric for the windsock, some interfacing, this one's going to go just on the exterior fabric, some thread, your 5 colors for the tail, some ribbon for the strings to hold it up, and you're also going to have a spring and a little clasp. So I just want to take a second to talk about the name of the small company that these springs are made by. The company is called Fat Quarter Gypsy, and their logo is a cute blonde woman waving from a camping trailer. And you might think of the word gypsy as a description for an easygoing, carefree person who likes to travel, but the word is actually a slur for the Romani people. They are real people who continue to face discrimination, and using the word gypsy is offensive. So the name is a big problem, but I still decided to use these products because I couldn't find any others. And I just felt it was important to say something. I also wrote a letter to the owner of the business to let her know my thoughts. So let's carry on. You're also going to need some pins, scissors, rotary cutter if you want for cutting, something to measure, something to mark. A couple of safety pins will be really good. And this is a tube turner, which is really nice for turning the tail, so you don't need them. You can even use the safety pins, but this is really nice to use if you have it. And also your instructions. Now we're going to cut out the interfacing. So what you have in your kit is a non-woven medium weight fusible interfacing. So because it's fusible, I'm going to cut this interfacing just a tiny bit smaller than the fabric I want to fuse it to. So this one is 10.5 by 17.5. I'm going to cut more like 10 3/8 by 17 3/8. What I usually do is I don't think about those numbers, I just go to 10.5 and then bring it down by 1/8. That way when you're fusing the fabric and the interfacing together, you don't have to worry about a little bit of the glue getting on your iron. So we need to cut this piece. All the tails are going to be 4 inches wide by 26 inches long. So I'm going to show you what you can do if your ruler is shorter than 26 inches. I'm going to put it on the 4. And I'm going to line up this horizontal line here with that line on the mat. That way I know it's square with the whole piece all the way down, even though I can't see the line on the end right here. Now I can move this up. Here's another way you can cut a long piece with a shorter ruler. I'm going to fold this in half. And so when you're cutting something that's on the fold, the most important thing is the fold, and that needs to line up on your horizontal line. Now I can go and cut this.
I love you.
Okay. Okay, sweetie. 6.5. 10 3/4. And 15. So we're gonna make a mark 1 inch down from the top here across all 4 marks. David's helping. because you're only going to sew up to those marks. So we have about 80 inches of ribbon here. I'm going to cut that in half. So I'm going to glue this in place. This is a water-soluble glue stick that is refillable. It's one of my favorite sewing tools. It eliminates the need for pins. Now we've got 2 ribbons sewn down on one side. We're going to thread both ribbons through the loop. Try to make sure it's not twisted. They both have to go through that loop. And so your first ribbon is going to go right here. Second one here. And we're going to sew those down as well. So this is what it looks like when all pins are on. So you've got your first ribbon going up through the clasp and down onto line number 3. Second ribbon going up through the clasp and down onto line number 4. So now we're going to be making the tails. And all you have to do is fold these in half the long way and sew one long edge and one short edge. So you've got all 10 tails sewn up just like this. So we're gonna clip the corners on the, and this just allows you to have a nice sharp corner. Sometimes I'll do it like that. On a fold corner, you just gotta make sure you don't cut too much of that fold off, otherwise you could have a little hole there. And now we'll turn them right side out. So I have a tube turner, which is really, really handy. You just stick this straw type thing all the way to the end, and then use the stick to gently poke that out. And I'm just going to keep pushing until that comes out. And it's that easy. Once you've done that, you can use the stick that's in there to poke those corners out really nice. And then we're going to try to run the stick down that edge just to try to get that seam to come up to the edge so that we have a nice crisp edge. And then we're going to iron them. So this is what you're aiming for with ironing. You want to have that seam right out to the edge. If you just go ahead and push down with the iron, often the seam's going to tuck in a little bit. You're going to lose a little bit of width, and you'll have a little flap with a fold. So you can, if your fingers will work like this, you can kind of roll the fabric like this. If your fingers are really dry, it's not gonna work, but you can roll it and that seam's gonna come out to the edge. So you can start ironing like that. And then your other hand can keep rolling it as you work your way down. If your fingers get dry, a little bit of steam from the iron, not directly on your hand. That's just what works for me. We're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch of it from the edge all the way around. You can leave that top part open. And when I top stitch, I usually like to lengthen the stitch to a 3. Now we're going to put the tails on. First, I'm going to make a little mark here. So we need to have 1/4 of an inch on each end for our side seam. Just to be safe, I'm actually going to mark 3/8 in. And I'm gonna start my tail there and end my tails over here so that there's lots of room. So you're gonna line up the raw edge to the raw edge at the bottom thing. And I'll see how it goes putting them together like this. I might have to overlap, we'll see if we have space. So we'll have to overlap just a little bit. This will depend on the size your seam allowance actually was. And once they're set, then we'll put some pins in to hold them in place. I'm going to put a pin down a bit as well as one up here. And that will keep them straight. And we're going to sew these down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to fuse the interfacing to the exterior fabric. Just give this a quick iron to make sure it's nice and smooth. The interfacing has the glue on one side, that's the bumpy side or the rough side that's going to go against your fabric. It should line up really nicely. I always find it easier to iron on the fabric side, so I'm flipping it. And now I can go and iron. Now we're going to fold up the bottom edge just like we're going to do a hem by about a 1/4 inch and press that. Give it a nice crease. So this is going to make our last step easier because it's going to be all folded and ready to go. I'm going to get all these tails and pull them down so they're out of the way. We're also going to pull the ribbons down like this. So now we're left with this 1 inch that didn't get stitched into the ribbon. And I'm gonna put the exterior right side down against this. And we're gonna sew this together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, that top edge. We'll be careful not to catch the ribbon. Now we're gonna iron this seam open. We're gonna open those folds up for now. Same with the fold down here. Now this is a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now you can see where the ribbons were dangling. I'm just gonna tuck them up. And now this time when we top stitch around the top, I'm actually gonna sew those ribbons up at the top. So they're gonna get caught in that seam. What's next, Luna? What are we supposed to do next? I think we're on step 24, okay? You ready? So now it's time to put the spring in. So I'm going to slide this in here. Push it up all the way to the top. It's really important that you don't take the tape off until it's time. So I'm going to push it right up into the top. It fits really nicely. And once it's in there, we'll put some pins. We're going to do 2 safety pins opposite to each other. We just have to make sure we put them where there's no tape. So peek inside. I found tape here, so there's tape here. So if I pin here and here, it's going to be okay. Pinning through both layers, and this is just to keep the spring in place because the pins are going to hold it small while we finish sewing this part, because we have to take the tape off right now after we're done pinning. So the pins are holding that spring in place. I'm going to just reach in, find the tape again, and cut that. Now will be the time to just arrange this bottom edge. I'm just going to start with the seam here, push that up to make that tidy. So we want that bottom edge to meet right here. And you can use pins or clips, but we're going to be sewing around this to hold it together. This is all pinned. I'm going to tuck this over here. I'll have to make sure that the tails don't get caught when we're sewing. So excited we get to remove the pins. It's popping out, and might need to help it out a little bit. You can give it a shake. And there it is. It's stretched right up.